Hey there, welcome to another Skeleton UI video. And in this video, we're going to look at the button component. And I'm going to show you a few things that you can do with the button component. Okay, so I've just got a Py file here just with my button component inside. So I'm just going to drag an instance of that into my scene here. Okay, so I'm just going to first look at one of the two ways we can get to the messages that the button gives us. So the button basically can broadcast messages to the scene. It can also broadcast messages via the component channel. Okay, so we're going to look at the component channel first. Okay, so I'm going to come over to my triggers panel. I'm going to add a receive trigger. I'm going to change the channel to receive from component. And I'm going to select the button 1 component. And then within the message, I'm going to choose button down. Okay, so I'm just going to come over to my shapes here and grab a star. Just going to draw a star here. And I'm just going to make that opacity of that star 0. Okay, so we've set up our button to respond to the button down message. So just within here, we're just going to add an opacity response. We're going to select that star and we're just going to bring the opacity up to 100. Okay, so let's just do a preview and check that's working. So when I press down, my star's appearing. Okay, that's cool. Okay, we're going to duplicate that receive and we're going to switch the message from button down to button up. And we're going to come into the opacity and we're going to turn the opacity down to 0. Okay, let's preview that. So when I press down, my star appears, and when I touch up, my star disappears. Okay, so there's an example of how you can use the button component with the component channel to control interactions. Okay, let's create another scene. And we're going to drag another button component out. We're going to draw another star. Okay, and we're going to come to our star here, and we're going to create a component out of it. So we're going to turn that into a component. So we've now got our star component. And what I want to do is I want to be able to control the star inside of the component, and we can't use the component channel when we want to talk to other components. Okay, so we have to use the scene. So this is where talking to the scene comes in handy. Okay, so I'm going to come into my star component. I'm going to go to main component. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a receive trigger. And I'm going to have to type the message in because I'm talking to another receive trigger, another component. ProtoPie can't introspect that. It can't see the messages in all of the component siblings. So I'm going to have to know exactly what the message is called. I'm going to have to type it exactly. So I know it's button up, so I'm just going to type that. Okay. And so when we receive the button up message from the scene, what we're going to do is we're going to assign it to a variable. So we need to create a component variable. I'm going to call that button up. And we need to make that a text variable. And this is going to capture the name of the button that's pressed. Okay, so we're going to come back to our receive trigger. We're going to check assign to variable, and we're going to select our button up variable. Okay, so this will now hold the name of the button. So we're going to come and add another trigger. We're going to add a detect trigger, and we're going to detect when the variable is changed. Okay, so we're going to add a condition here, and we're going to choose our button up variable, and we're going to look to see when it reads OK. Okay, and when it reads OK, we're going to add an opacity and we're going to select our star and we're going to turn its opacity up to 100. Let's just turn the initial opacity down to 0 so it's invisible. We're actually going to duplicate this condition and we're going to add another condition and check when we get a message called cancel. And when we get a message called cancel, we're going to make the star opacity 0. Okay, let's come back out of our component to here. So we're going to duplicate our instance. So we've got 2 component instances now. We're going to call this one OK, and this one cancel. And we just need to change the name override. So you can see if I select the button, I can get to the name override. So if this OK one, I want to make it OK. And for cancel, I want to make it cancel, all lowercase. Just double check that, OK, and cancel. Okay, cool. So that's all we need to do. Let's hit preview, and we're going to click the OK button. And we can see that our star inside of our component is showing. And we can click the cancel button and we can see that the star has now disappeared. So these are the sorts of situations where you'd want to be using the scene channel as opposed to the component channel, when you want your button component to talk to something else inside of another component. So that's one example of how you might use that. Okay, I want to show you one more thing, and this is more around how you can skin the components as opposed to any specific functionality. So I'm going to add another scene, and I'm going to again bring out a button component instance. I'm going to stick it in the center, I think. So something that I've added additionally inside of this component is an icon component. So it's another nested component called icon, and this allows you to create kind of icon buttons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show this nested component. So you can see you've got a little circle in the center there. And you can see here it's set to 24 pixels square. So that's the standard icon size that we use. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the size of the overall button. So I'm going to set it to 44 square. Okay, so we've got a circular button. I'm actually going to make the plate, so that's the background color. So I'm going to set that to white. And I'm going to turn the label off, just going to hide the label because we don't need a label for this. And for the icon, I've already got another icon component, so this brightness icon. I've already imported that in. So I'm just going to switch my icon out for the brightness icon. Just going to make sure we hide that, and we show that, sorry. Okay, we're going to select the button component here in the layers panel. I'm just going to come down to the border property. Just going to set a border. Just going to make sure that's set to outside. If we set it to inside, you'll see that it disappears. That's because our plate has also got a fill, and the border and the fill of the component, the container component, always sits underneath the plate. So a bit like Figma. So let's just come back to that. Move the border back out to the outside. Cool. So we've got this now, this skinned button, and you can see it's picking up the same hit state. So basically the touchdown fill color is this color here. So we can change that to any color we want. So maybe we change that to a yellow. And let's come back. And now we can see we've got our yellow down state. And I'm just going to add a rectangle to this overall screen. Let's just make that as big as the scene. We're going to stick that underneath. And let's make that black. Okay. And we're going to come over, we're going to call it, actually name this light. Just for fun. Actually, I don't even need to use that. I can do it with the component, can't I? So I'm actually going to call this light here. So I'm going to add a trigger, add a receive trigger. So obviously we can do it either way. We can either use the scene channel or we can use the component channel here. So let me use the component channel since it's just a single button and we're not talking to another component. So this is a lot easier. And we're going to use the target light, and we're going to use the button up message. Okay, so when we receive that, we're going to change the color of the rectangle. We're going to change the fill color to yellow. Okay, so that's all we need to do. Let's come into preview. And when I press down and up, you can see that I've turned on the light and it is now yellow. But as you can see, we've got a highly customized button here, and we've done that all from the same button component. Okay, so this about wraps up our look at the button component and how you can use it with its various messages and overrides. See you soon.